Yeah, I think so. In Germany, you cannot, people are like kind of after the historically they had some kind of bad politics. They always try to be good so that they just never want to show them like we proud Germany. We were like, we Germans are the highest in blah blah blahs and everything. So these kind of
Well, just very, very briefly, the Germans were in danger of being taken over by what they perceived as Jewish-led communism. And Jewish-led communism had wiped out tens of millions of white Christians in Russia, and they were afraid of the same thing. And there was this wild overreaction and all this kind of stuff. So that just wanted very briefly for that stuff. But with regards to immigration as a whole, I mean, there's an interesting question, and I'd like to get your answer to this. But there's an interesting question to ask if you're in someone else's country, which is to say, how would I sell me being in this country to the nation? Communism doesn't particularly come from the Greek, Roman, Western Enlightenment tradition. It generally comes from Jewish tradition. So many, of course, of the founders of communism were Jews. Jews were less than 2% of the Russian population, but were more than 50% of the leaders of the Communist Party. And of course, a lot of them were in charge of concentration camps and so on later on under the Soviet regime.
Yeah, but I mean, like during the Holocaust, for instance, the Jews who were fleeing Nazi Germany were on the boat to Ellis Island, and FDR sent them back where they were killed. I mean, I think that's pretty horrific. I mean, the consequence of not having that immigration was that these people now were died and got killed. Right? So.
Yeah, so it's really bad what Hitler did.
Right, but FDR could have helped by allowing the Jews to have a safe haven, right?
I don't know about the politics, and I know about the Jews that went around the world looking for safe havens, and that was a big problem. Now back then, of course, I mean they were just having the start of the welfare state and all that kind of stuff. So that why didn't you hear about that in the 19th century? Because lots of Jews got to come out. Without the welfare state, they could land no problem. That's number one. Number two is that a lot of Jews in Europe in the 1930s were communists. Oh, by God, but there are a lot of communists. And, a lot of the communists were Jews. Maybe they couldn't vet them. Maybe they didn't have papers. Maybe they were concerned that Hitler was fighting, right? It was Nazism versus Bolshevism, right? The communists and the Nazis were fighting tooth and nail in the streets in Germany. And so it could be, and of course there are a lot of Jews, as I've talked about before, a lot of Jews were instrumental in the founding of communism and the spread of communism. Jews were, 2% of the Russian population, but 40% of the communists and so on. And so there were a lot of Jews who were instrumental in the founding of communism. This was a very strong anti-communist time in America, and communists were infiltrating the U.S. government considerably. I mean, this McCarthyism hysteria and so on, there was real foundation for it. I mean, there were hundreds of Soviet spies all riddled throughout the U.S. government, particularly in the State Department, particularly in the the embassies out in China, which is one of the reasons why massive segments of the world population were lost to communism in China, because there were huge riddles of communists throughout the place. So I don't know the history, but I think that would be a bit of a security concern. You'd have to ask FDR if you could, but I don't know. Maybe the factors exist and maybe they don't. But there were some security concerns about intellectuals fleeing Germany, because a lot of them weren't like freedom fighters who didn't like Nazism. A lot of them were like, damn, we didn't win with communism. We communists didn't win, so let's go flee to America. Well, I don't know that you want a whole bunch of communists coming into America. I mean, didn't do America a lot of good in the Cold War.